All right, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. This morning we'll talk about DrayTek Wireless. DrayTek has a very good, exciting solutions for wireless, and they're coming to market with innovative solutions. We're going to have Mia, which is the DrayTek expert, in a presentation on wireless and what DrayTek has developed that can help you provide better solutions to your customers. Mia, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Once again, thank you all for us today. My name is Mia Athawale. I'm the DrayTek Technical Engineer at ABP Technology. So let's start by taking a look at what we are going to be covering in today's webinar. First, we will take a look at some of DrayTek's strengths that make it a perfect wireless solution for SMBs. This will be followed by an introduction to the wireless routers and access point models that DrayTek offers. We'll then explore the centralized AP management feature in some detail. And if time permits, we will also have a demo of the APM and access points that we have set up in the lab, so we can go through all the features that we discuss in the webinar. We will end with a Q&A session, so don't forget to send your questions either through the chat window, or if you're listening to the recording, you can mail me your queries at abptech.com. So why DrayTek Wireless? We see nowadays that Wi-Fi devices have become very commonplace in corporate networks. A few years back, Wi-Fi was just limited to personal devices and smartphones and laptops. But today, with the Internet of Things, Wi-Fi is used by practically all kinds of devices, like barcode scanners, thermostats. The issue is that the 2.4 gigahertz band that is being used by most devices is becoming increasingly crowded. And it is subject to a lot of interference, so performance suffers. Also, for SMBs, most SMBs are still using access points of various brands in their network. They don't really have a centralized wireless controller. They might not have the budget for a wireless controller, or there's a steep learning curve with wireless controllers. They have to be compatible with the existing SMB infrastructure. Quite often they are not. They require specialized training, and overall it can be pretty daunting for SMBs. So what happens is network administrators end up installing and maintaining each individual access point manually instead of being able to do it centrally. And that's where we think DrayTek would be a perfect solution, because it gives SMBs the ability to manage their access points from a central location. They can manage them from their router, which they are already used to. They are already used to the graphical interface of their DrayTek router and firewall. People love it. It's really intuitive. So you can now manage your access points from the same intuitive interface. Also, DrayTek access points come with dual band, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So for important wireless applications and clients, you can get them to connect to the 5 gigahertz for a better performance and throughput. And the centralized management makes it really simple to deploy multiple access points for better wireless coverage throughout your network. So we think the DrayTek router and firewall bundled with DrayTek access points make a really great solution, and it really adds value to what you can offer your customers. So let's take a look at the DrayTek wireless router models. Both the single WAN 2120 series and the dual WAN routers, the 2925 series, that's our most popular dual WAN router. The 2860 is a VDSL router with another Ethernet port. All these series, they come in single band and dual band wireless variants. While ordering, the N, the model number followed by an N is the single band, and followed by an N plus is the dual band. DrayTek also offers 3 different access points, 710, 810, and the AP900 to suit varying SMB budgets and whether you require PoE and whether you require VLANs and isolate your wireless clients from your wired networks, and the kind of management capabilities that you need from those access points. So all these models are going to be different. This is our most popular access point. It's won a ton of awards. It's really great. We love it. We use it in our networks. So it comes with a concurrent dual band 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz band. We found that it works without stalling for 64 clients connecting to each band. It has 4 SSIDs on each band. It supports PoE. You can have 2 separate LAN switches. So if you want to connect your guest network directly to the internet without going through your internal wired network, you can do that. It supports airtime fairness now with the latest firmware upgrade, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And supports all the operation modes that you might need, like access point, universal repeater, point-to-point bridge, point-to-multipoint bridge, WDS bridge. It has a built-in radius server. And the best part is it supports the full suite of centralized management features, that access point management, the APM feature that is provided on your router. So your router can completely manage the AP900 from a central location. Here's a quick comparison between the 3 different access points that we offer. As you can see, the 710 is very limited. It's not possible to manage it from a central router, but it's at a very it's at a low price point. So, but it doesn't offer any great features. The 810 is a little better. It's a fast Ethernet access point. It has almost all the features that AP900 has, except dual band. And then you can see the AP900. So let's move on to the interesting part, access point management. I love this feature. It was made available on your DrayTek router, the 2925 and 2860 series last year. And what's great is it can manage up to 20 access points from the router's graphical interface. We will take a look at that when we get to the demo. And it's really simple to deploy access points because of this feature. It's just completely plug and play. You can plug in your access point. It's going to get an IP address from your router, and the router is going to push a default profile to every access point that's plugged in. Now you can also customize these profiles. So you can pre-configure the router so that it pushes a certain SSID, a certain wireless setting as soon as an access point is plugged into your network. Then it supports centralized AP maintenance. You can reboot remotely, restore configs, you can backup configs, firmware upgrades. It supports AP load balancing, which is a very interesting feature, and we'll talk about that a little later. And traffic graphs, they are quite cool to monitor the performance of your access points. So let's take a look at some of the individual features. As I was mentioning, you can upgrade the firmware or backup and restore your configs, and you can do this individually for each access point, or you can do it in batch mode. So you can push firmware out to 3 different access points at the same time. The traffic graph is really useful because it lets you monitor the performance of each of your APs to make sure that they are being used to their maximum optimum levels, and to make sure that one of them is not being overwhelmed while the others are not utilized. And you can also have daily and weekly graphs for this. Now, load balance is a really cool feature, and it's available in the 900, AP900 and the AP810. What happens is, if you have too many stations connecting to one of your APs in your network, while the other APs don't have that many stations, or they are not using much of their bandwidth, then you can actually configure the load balance feature such that any device trying to connect to the AP that's already meeting the limits of the limits that you set for station number or the traffic will be pushed to the next AP. Also, you can force the clients already connected to an AP to disassociate. So if a client has been idle for too long, or if the client has moved away from that AP and there are some other better APs available in its vicinity, then we can disassociate that client from the prior AP by signal strength. So it's a really, really useful feature to make sure that your traffic is evenly distributed across all your access points. This is a graphical example of what I was just talking about. It tries to connect to the AP, which has a limit of 50 Mbps, which is already full. So it's sent to the second access point, which still has some 20 Mbps spare. Let's talk about airtime fairness a little bit. This was implemented in the latest firmware of the AP900. So the issue that this airtime fairness attempts to resolve is that the wireless channel, the 802.11n standard, suggests that the wireless channel can only be accessed by one wireless station at a time. So this was proposed to make sure that all the stations connecting to the wireless channel have an equal probability and equal priority to access it. But that's not exactly how it works out, because stations have different data rates. Some stations which use 802.11g have a lower data rate than those using 802.11n. So they take longer to transmit a single packet than the 802.11n station. So what happens is the faster stations, their performance suffers if there are too many slower data rate stations connecting to your Wi-Fi. DrayTek proposed a solution with airtime fairness. What they are trying to do is increase the probability of the faster stations to access the wireless channel, as you can see. And they do this by controlling the transmission rate. So they try to taper off the transmission rate on the slower wireless stations so that the ones with the faster data rates get more time, more airtime. Here's a summary. It's a good summary of airtime fairness. So in theory, the more number of stations you have that are accessing your wireless channel, the less airtime each one of them is going to get. Now in theory, they're supposed to get equal airtime, but that's not what happens, as you can see. And with airtime fairness, we are attempting to equalize it a little bit. Not perfectly, but still better, much better than what it is without airtime fairness. Now it works in some specific environments. So it works if the bottleneck, the performance bottleneck, is being created due to the wireless connection. This is important because if the performance bottleneck is actually a slower device, a slower PC with a slow processor, then airtime fairness is not going to help you. So the wireless has to be followed. Yes?
Yeah, let me add a little bit there. It's very common that once you deploy the wireless network, you find it working well, but over time they say that the performance is not as expected. Well, but it's common that you have a slow client, maybe old or maybe too far away. Well, that client will reduce the performance for everybody, and that's a very common problem. So this is a very unique solution from DrayTek that this airtime fairness doesn't let that happen. The slow client is not going to affect everybody's performance because it will allocate less airtime to that slow client, and everybody will benefit from it.
Right.
Go ahead.
And one more thing I would like to add to that, Henry. Like you mentioned, not only a slow client, but a client that gets very far away, and then it's using too much of the airtime, right? So this airtime fairness can then be combined with the forced disassociation based on signal strength, which is a really good idea. So the client that moves away will be kicked off that access point. So another requirement is that most of the stations are using they have a heavy download traffic because airtime fairness controls the transmitted traffic. So the download has to be the one causing the bottleneck. And it can kick in with, it generally works better when you see many wireless stations connecting. You won't notice much of a difference if there are very few wireless stations connecting to your channel. It also, we will see that later in the demo, but it also lets you set a threshold for the number of wireless stations. So you can see if the wireless stations exceed 20, that's when airtime fairness should start kicking in and throttling some of the slower stations so that the faster stations have better performance. Now let's look at some of the other useful features that come with the DrayTek access points and DrayTek wireless routers. So this station control is really good for hospitality type of environments, cafes, where you don't want clients to connect forever, and you want to free up the access points after some time, so you can set a specific connection time after which they will be disassociated. And then you can also specify a reconnection time. So you can say that a client cannot connect again during that day. He can only connect again the next day. It's really useful for hotels and cafes. Bandwidth management is another great feature. Now this is separate on the routers. This is separate from the bandwidth management and QoS features of the router, the traffic shaping. This is bandwidth management for wireless. So you can set up an upload and download limit for each of your stations to make sure that one station is not starving everyone else. Okay, so let's, Henry, do you have any questions, or should I go for the demo? Okay, let me start the demo.
We'll have the questions at the end. I'm collecting the questions, so if you have any question, just send it on the chat window or the GoToMeeting, and we'll go over your questions at the end.
Okay. As you can see, I'm logged in to the DrayTek 2925 series router. This is our most popular router, and it's dual WAN. As you can see on the left, it's completely loaded with features. But the one that we are going to focus on right now is Central Access Point Management. I would like to point out that this model that I'm using has its own wireless LAN inbuilt. So it has all the wireless features that we mentioned, like station list, station control, bandwidth management. So I have 2 access points connecting to this router right now. I have an AP900 and AP810 connecting to the router, and this, as soon as I plug them in to the network, they show up here under status in Central AP Management. They already receive, as you can see, they have received DHCP IPs from the router. Now they were pushed profiles that I had pre-configured in the router. So SSID test 4, test 5, they had been configured already. But if I didn't have a profile configured, let's go into the wireless profiles. So test is the profile I configured to be pushed out to the access points, but if I didn't have it, then they would be pushed out the default profile. You can configure both the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands from this central interface. configure the passwords for the admin and also the security settings for both the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Now you can choose to assign different VLANs to your profiles, to your SSIDs. You can choose to isolate each wireless station from other wireless stations. All kinds of, all the commonly accepted security features are available. So you can either have a pre-shaped key or you can have the client authenticating to an external radius server. It also comes with an inbuilt radius server. You can have the bandwidth limit for each station connecting to that access point. And that's it. Once you configure the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands, you can save that profile and then have it sent to, make it your default profile if you wish, and have it sent to any access point that connects to the network. Now, AP maintenance. You can config, you can restore or backup your config, remote reboot an access point, or push firmware to multiple access points or individually. So let's try doing that with AP810. As you see, the config of AP810 was downloaded on my computer. You can also push firmware to it. Firmware of AP is upgraded. Right from your router. Do not have to even log into your access point.
Mia, there's a relevant question I can send you now. Maybe you mentioned this. How many access points can you manage or control from the router? That comes with PoE, connecting the unit, and that's all that needs to that's all they need to do. Everything can be done remote and control centralized from the router. So all the SSIDs, the passwords, and everything, and the bandwidth limits, and everything that Mia was showing, then is done remotely. It's an excellent solution for MSPs.
Okay, so the firmware has been upgraded on the access point 810. It shows up in the success list. Now, if you had multiple access points, this is a good way to keep track of which ones have been upgraded. Now, I don't really have too many stations connected to my access points in the lab, but you can see there's one station connecting to AP900. This is the load balance feature that we discussed. So you can either limit the station, you can set limits based on the station number connecting to each AP, so that anything exceeding that will be sent to another AP in the vicinity, or by traffic. Rogue AP detection is a feature that DrayTek is still working on. It's useful to detect the access points in the neighborhood and mark them as either something that belongs to a network, or the others you can mark as rogue. And later they are planning to develop some policies based on that. So very quickly, let's take a look at the 1800. These are the different modes that it supports. This is another cool feature, the temperature sensor. You can plug in a USB temperature sensor to your access point and keep a check on the temperature of the room. It's useful for hospitality applications. So the LEDs can turn off at night, and then they can start again in the morning. Here's the airtime fairness setting that we discussed. So you can set up the triggering client number, after which the airtime fairness is going to kick in. It gives you some tips for the type of environment in which airtime fairness will be suitable. Once you enable it, you can check the airtime status to see how your slower clients are being, the traffic is being a little throttled. So all the stations connecting to your access point will show up here if airtime fairness has been enabled. And the triggering number of stations has been reached, which in this case it hasn't. So it will show you where the access point has begun to control the transmitted traffic from the slow stations and how many packets have been controlled. And also shows you the airtime that is being allocated to each station. And you can see that once it's enabled, it's more even, the distribution of airtime. The bandwidth management that we discussed, you can set up an upload and download limit for every station. And the general wireless settings that you don't really have to come into and log into the access point individually, manually to configure. You can configure all these settings from the centralized access management on the router. Now here's a sneak peek at some of our upcoming releases. DrayTek is planning to release these in the next month. I'm sure this is a question in everyone's minds. We are coming out with AC models. They will be available in the 2925 and 2860 series of routers. And they are also coming up with a 910C that is going to support 11AC. And all these models are it's possible to manage them from the centralized access point management. Now what's interesting is they are also adding switch management to their routers. So we will be announcing that very soon, but they are coming up with some switch models that can be managed in the same way as the access points. You do not have to log into the individual switches. You can control them from your router.
Yeah, I have a few questions here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One question about the AP900. How many clients can it work with? How many can you associate?
They have found that it works well without stalling for up to 64 clients on each band.
Okay, 64 is very good.
Yeah.
The management for the switches. Somebody is asking about the switch. Is DrayTek releasing a switch? It can also be managed, centralized from the router?
Yes, that's the one I mentioned just now. This is the model that can be managed, and they are planning to release it in a couple of months. I think it won't be that long. We'll hear about it soon.
All right. Another question is.
The router also will have a firmware upgrade so that it gets the switch management feature in its interface. And all DrayTek's firmware upgrades are free, so no additional costs at all.
Okay, very good. That makes it a very complete networking solution for any SMB that can be deployed remotely. Very good. Another question on the new products. Is there any outdoor model at this point, or there will be?
Well,
outdoor
not
access
at this
points.
Point. Not that I know of at this point.
Okay. Well, we'll check with the manufacturer and see. I'm pretty sure they have something in the roadmap regarding outdoor models. Another question is about the USB applications. Basically, what is a USB application that you can do? You show the temperature, is that one?
Right. It also supports a printer. We can go back to that. Yeah, the temperature sensor is the one, and let me see this. I know it supports a printer too.
Okay. Just to answer Iron, the USB, the routers, most of the DrayTek models come with USB ports, the routers and the access points, and you can plug in USB devices, and there are some applications built into the firmware for those USB devices. Examples of USB devices, for example, printer, you can have a shared printer, so this your router could become the print server for the SMB. There's also another application in which you can connect a USB drive. So you connect a USB drive, and then your router becomes the NAS or file server, small file for SMBs also. The other application is you connect this USB thermometer. Mia's going to show that in the GUI.
Yeah, The thermometer, yes, and for the router, I believe the most important one is the 3G, 4G modem that you can connect to the USB. So we have
Exactly.
AT&T and Verizon modem supported in USA right now.
Okay, so another application will be connecting a LTE USB dongle. So your router becomes a LTE dongle. Sorry, an LTE router. One of the ones could be an LTE network. I think we are on time. We don't want to keep everybody for too long. We plan for 45 minutes, 45 minutes. If there is no questions, we can wrap up. Mia, thank you, great question. We're gonna have a recording. Probably we're gonna upload to our website or to DrayTekUSA.com website for you guys to download and share with your coworkers.
And if you do have any questions, you can just email me at mia@abptech.com with any technical questions regarding what we just covered or anything else about DrayTek. Any feature requests also.
Yes, and AC we mentioned, somebody's asking about AC. Yes, AC is in the roadmap. It's probably when it's already announced, and next month we can take orders for AC models.
And all of them are going to be available under access point management on your router. So, I mean, you could have AP900s in your network. You can add AC access points as well, and I mean, you can have different DrayTek models, but all DrayTek access points will be able, they will be available under APM, except the 710.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mia. Good presentation, and we'll make this recording available soon to you. If you have more questions, you can just email us or call us. You can always go to www.draytekusa.com where we have the latest models and information. Also, we don't have the old models that are not for sale anymore in America. Thank you for your attention. And with this, we finish our webinar. Thank you, Mia.
Thank you. Thank you.